He's in our Canberra studio today. Bill Shorten, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Okay, well, you played a key role in the removal of Kevin Rudd as Prime Minister. Now you've played a role in the removal of Julia Gillard as Prime Minister. Are you a traitor?
No, what's guided my actions in the last 24 hours is a view that Australian people want to see in our democracy Labor be as competitive as possible. I don't believe it's in the nation's interests for a landslide outcome, and that's what it was looking like, a landslide outcome to the Conservatives.
But in both cases, you showed no loyalty to the elected Prime Minister.
What guides me is my loyalty to what I think is the best interest of Australian people and to the Labor Party. Politics is often drilled down to personalities. Last night was an incredibly difficult time, but I also know that it's the cause which I serve, the Labor Party. The commitment I have to Australian democracy is more than just individuals. And I know that there are some people who've liked me will not like me now. And I know that there's other people who don't like Labor and won't want to see Kevin Rudd as the leader, or indeed Julia Gillard. Julia Gillard, and only Julia Gillard, I believe, could have led Labor through this minority government period. And she and the government have got a lot done, including, but not limited to, a national disability insurance scheme.
But does this mean that opinion polls really decide who's Prime Minister?
No.
But that's what you're basing your decisions on, isn't it?
No, what I'm basing it on is what I think is important for Australia. It is in no one's interests. Doesn't matter if you're a die-hard Liberal or a die-hard Labor, for one side of politics to have an overwhelming control of both houses of Parliament. It's just not in the national interest.
Could Kevin Rudd have won without your support?
Yes, probably.
Why did you go public before the meeting?
Well, I have a position in the Labor Party which means a lot of people saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And some people said, just say nothing, slip through the cracks. But I believe that for all of the hundreds and hundreds of people who've been saying, what do you think, what do you think? I thought it was more true to myself to say what I think before a ballot than afterwards.
When did you make up your mind?
I finally made up my mind after the challenge was announced and the spill. But it's certainly over the last couple of weeks I've been weighing it up. There's countless, if not thousands, hundreds of people who've been saying do this, do that, and I've been taking counsel from a lot of different people, many of them not in politics.
Is your credibility damaged, though? I mean, on Friday you were really telling me it was a media invention, that you were supporting the Prime Minister. Where's your credibility now?
Oh, I think that for some people, they'll say this is a terrible mistake of judgment. I get that.
But what about misleading people? What about this
at the end of the day,
invention?
Games. Neil, at the end of the day, you've got to be true to yourself. You've got to follow your own.
What about being true to the people who elected you?
Well, that's what I'm doing. I think the people who elect me want to see Labor governments. They want to see the Labor Party to be most competitive. This is not an easy decision. It's a terrible decision. But on balance, it's not about the personality of the Prime Minister Rudd or former Prime Minister Gillard or myself. It is about what you think is in the best interests of the country. But I do not believe, and again, there'll be some people who just don't agree with this, but I do not believe it's in the best interest of the nation for Tony Abbott's coalition to control the House of Representatives and the Senate after the next election.
But why does there have to be the dishonesty, as there was here last Friday? As recently as yesterday, your office was saying you supported the Prime Minister. Yesterday lunchtime. Why the dishonesty?
I'm not even buying that proposition that you're putting.
What, it's not dishonest?
No, I'm not buying that proposition. Neil, as I was going through the process of working out what to do you think it's my job to be like a public worrywart saying, should I or shouldn't I? That just destabilises the situation. If I'm going to have counsel from people, if I'm going to reflect, I'm not going to do so in such a way which destabilises the government or the nation for 2 or 3 weeks.
So that means you have to lie?
No, what it means is I made my No, you're just wrong on that. Let me be really straight with you.
You told me you were supporting the Prime Minister up until the next election.
Up till the spill, which happened at 4:30, and up to the challenge, yes, I was going to support the Prime Minister, But I am saying to you that for the last couple of weeks, in what has only been very personally difficult and complex, you've got a lot of people saying the government's going nowhere in a hurry. You've got some people who are saying stay where you are.
Well, when did you first speak to Kevin Rudd about it?
About the leadership this week.
When?
I'm not going to go into every private conversation.
No,
Neil.
I don't want to know what happened. When?
This week. And what I'd also say to you, Neil, is this. This is an incredibly difficult decision. And if you say that every member of parliament should always be debating every issue aloud in the media, well, I'm not going to.
No, but I'd like to think that we could get some sort of directness. And you and I sat here and played this word game, and we both knew we were playing a word game. We both knew it was that there wasn't honesty coming out. You were saying it was
Neil,
a media
you keep saying
invention.
that.
I'm over it. I'm
Neil,
over it.
Again, I'm in a...
But you knew something was on.
Neil, there are plenty of people saying, change your position, change your position. But I'm not going to...
You said nobody had spoken to you about that.
No, hang on a second. You asked me if one person's spoken to me. Neil, you were speaking to me about it. Everyone's been speaking about how the government's been going. Neil, it's very plain for me, and it's very hard. What is plain to me is that what matters in this country is a robust democracy. Labor may or may not win the next election. I think our chances are improved to do better. But it is in no one's interest for either Labor to have lots and lots of power and the Conservatives to have no say at all, and the opposite is also true, for the Conservatives to have all power and Labor to become potentially irrelevant. How does that... This democracy functions best with strong governments and strong oppositions.
How has Kevin Rudd changed since the Kevin Rudd you engineered to remove 3 years and 3 days ago?
Well, he's said himself that he's reflected upon what's happened. He's learned lessons about consultation, about listening, about learning lessons from the way he would have done things differently from when he was in power the first time.
And you're confident that's right?
Yes, on balance I am.
Why?
Well, the bloke I've spoken to in very recent times seems to have changed his view about what he needs to do, the way he needs to consult with other members of the government. I think we'll see more of some of the ideas he has to unveil in the very near future.
So did you ask him for guarantees that he would operate in a different way?
I, like others in the caucus, and this was a decision of 102 people, have watched and listened to what he's had to say in very recent times. The government is now unified. It is now clear that we've settled on the leadership question for the next election. This is what matters to me is not myself, and I accept I'll pay some personal cost because other people will say what you're saying. But what matters to me is if I really believe in the Labor cause, which I really do, if I really think that kids with disabilities deserve to get better care, if I really think that the kids at the Essendon, Keilor College need to have more resources, if I think that people need to retire with more income, more super than otherwise would, I'm not going to give up opposing the Conservatives and Tony Abbott, who would trash those issues.
But that wasn't the question. The question was whether you asked Kevin Rudd for any guarantees on the way he operates.
I believe that he will operate in a more consultative, open style, and
You haven't answered the question still. Did you ask him for any guarantees?
I'm answering your question. I am answering your question.
Did you ask him for any guarantees?
Now, what's happened last night doesn't necessarily suit the to and fro of Talkback Radio. What I'm saying to you is this. Yes, I believe he's changed. Yes, I believe that the legacy of the minority government accomplished by Prime Minister Gillard is worth defending. And yes, I believe that the coalition are not going to offer a better deal for all the schools in my electorate.
And I'm asking whether you asked for any guarantees from him on the way he operates.
I've asked for no guarantees. I believe that he has changed.
Okay. Why do you say you'll pay a personal cost? How will you pay a personal cost?
Look at what you're saying. Like people... You're just sort of banding around and saying you're dishonest. You know, other people say, oh, we don't like Shorten, he's changed. He's decided to support...
Well, Bill the
Prime
Knife,
Minister
they're
Rudd.
calling you here.
Oh, well, you know, that's... Call me whatever you want, Neil, and whatever names you've got. I think that Australian politics is more than just personalities. I've said that to you in the past. And I believe the Labor Party needs to be the... There's people who like the Labor Party, who want the Labor Party to be competitive, who I believe had switched off. Now, whether or not they'd switched off for fair or unfair reasons is for individuals to decide. But Neil, what I believe is that the Gonski reforms, which are about actually providing more resources in schools, the Libs are just saying that we're going to do nothing on government schools or private schools for 2 years and we're going to keep the status quo. I want the kids in my electorate in primary school and secondary school to get more resources.
Is the personal
The Libs are proposing to put a new 15% tax on the superannuation contributions of people less than $37,000 a year.
Is the personal cost you think you could pay, does that mean in the future, do you think that if you ever had any hope or ambition to be opposition leader or prime minister, that's finished now?
I'm prepared with what I've done to pay whatever price is necessary, because what I believe I've done is give Labor the best chance
Is that the sort of price you think you could pay, that your popularity will plummet to such that you couldn't be leader?
Yeah, that is possible, yes. But what I also know is that sometimes in politics, if you want everyone to like you, you probably shouldn't be in politics. But what I want people to realise is that members of Parliament are capable of making difficult decisions, and whether or not people like them or they don't, what they need to know is that people will actually not just look at personalities, friendships, subgroupings, but rather what do they think is the best way to promote your team and your cause, and therefore the nation.
You might just want to hear this because Kevin Rudd's about to be sworn in by the Governor General.
Subscribe the oath of office as Prime Minister.
Kevin Rudd stepping forward now.
I, Kevin Michael Rudd, do swear that I will well and truly serve the Commonwealth of Australia, her land and her people, in the office of Prime Minister. So help me God.
Would you sign the document there?
Well, he's Prime Minister now, Bill Shorten. How do you feel?
Oh, I feel the events of the last 24 hours have been politically the most difficult in my work sense I've done, but I actually believe now Labor has a chance to provide a more competitive choice for Australians at the next election.
How does Australia look internationally, changing leaders like this?
Oh, I think that Australia's got a lot of good things going for it, and I think what people look when they look at Australia is they look at a country which has got relatively low unemployment. We've grown 13% in our economy since the GFC. I think most people think Australia's a lucky country.
Do you know what portfolio you'll have now?
I assume it'll be the same.
Okay, have you discussed that with Kevin Rudd?
I've indicated that I'd like to stay where I am.
What are the priorities for Kevin Rudd?
Oh, he'll articulate his priorities in coming days. It's not for me to announce what he's going to do, but I know that in my portfolio areas, we want to make sure that superannuation goes up from 9 to 12%. We want to make sure that people who earn less than $37,000 don't have a great big new 15% tax put on them by the Liberals. We want to make sure that workplaces are fair and there's a fair go all round. These are some of the priorities. The National Disability Insurance Scheme, making sure that the people who've come up with the idea are in office to make sure the idea actually happens.
Mr. Shorten, when you see what's happened over the past few weeks, in fact the past few years, and what's happened overnight, can you understand why people in Australia are extremely cynical and even mistrusting of their politicians?
I can understand that sudden unexpected change is disconcerting to people, but I also know that this is not a new thing in politics. I think people will recall not too many months ago that Premier Ted Baillieu just suddenly stepped down, and all of a sudden we had Premier Napthine. These things do happen. What I think is important is that the Labor government reminds people that they're interested in what happens with the nation and people, and they're not just focused on themselves. What we need now is unity. What we need now is healing.
Okay.
I've been a consistent and long-time supporter of Prime Minister Gillard. Yesterday was incredibly difficult to arrive at that decision. But what I also know is that even if you're a true blue Liberal, no one can really be happy if you've got one side of politics looking like they're going to thoroughly get trounced by the other side.
And how did Julia Gillard take the news when you told her you weren't going to support her?
She was very, very professional and very, very graceful.
Wasn't angry?
I know.
Surprised?
I'm not going to go into what we said, but what I do know is that she was classy.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.